Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our September Gender Equity Commission meeting. My name is Morgan Overton, acting chair of the Gender Equity Commission. And as usual, I'm going to go ahead and start off with a roll call. And I first see Commissioner Ramey.
I'm present.
Commissioner Hale, who I believe went to go get some water, so I know she's here. Commissioner Manuel.
Present.
And Commissioner Overton. I'm sure we'll have some people joining us. But I first wanted to kick off by saying Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Kicked off on September 15th, and it's going all the way through October 15th. But we celebrate our Hispanic neighbors every single day of the year. So I just wanted to uplift that. And to go into old business very quickly, I did include, and there's Marcel. Marcel is joining us. I did include August's minutes in our folder for commissioners to vote on, and I think we have a quorum. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we're good. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes for August 2022?
Motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, wonderful. And I just want to give a reminder for our friends watching that if you are interested in serving on a board, authority, or a commission in the city of Pittsburgh, we have released our citywide volunteer initiative, and you can go to Engage PGH to find that link and apply. Tell your friends to apply because we want all of our boards, authorities, and commissioners to represent the city of Pittsburgh. Another bit of old business that we can briefly discuss is that we are coming up on the end of the year. This year has flown, and usually we consider new commissioners to serve in our leadership. So I wanted to give some space for us to discuss that. We will need a whole new slate of a chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. So I want to give space for our commissioners to talk that out. I know that Jaleesa is running late for our governance and leadership committee, but commissioners, any thoughts on that? Yes, Jesse.
I think since Jaleesa's not here, I'll try and speak up on behalf of our committee. We didn't meet this month, but we are eager to see some interim leadership to support the executive leadership team, which of course has been running really thin. And we know that as a commission, and as commissioners, we're running thin too. So I would welcome maybe a brief conversation if we have a few minutes now to think about what an interim solution might look like for the fall. And then the leadership committee would put forward a formal slate of officers that we would vote on. It would be presented in December and voted on in January. That would be the process. But if we wanted to do something as an interim measure, I think that we could talk about that now and even potentially vote on it now that we have a quorum.
Yeah.
Others might have thoughts.
All of us on the leadership committee, the executive committee are here. So that leaves you, Judy.
One possibility might be to have a committee of the whole. You know, that's another way to think about it. Since there's so few of us, we could think about doing some of the work as a committee of the whole, or maybe we want to talk about.
My internet is breaking up, so I don't know if anybody can hear me.
Oh,
Bessie, do you mean like instead of having official titles to just say these 3 people will be the leadership committee as on a temporary basis until we can have elections in January?
I mean, bringing the whole, everybody together to do that committee's work, the executive committee's work as a committee of the whole, because there's so few of us that presently trying to serve on our committees. Like, I know that when we meet as the leadership committee, the governance and leadership development committee, that's Jaleesa, Sloan, and I are meeting, but we're trying to work in support of the executive committee. So it may be that meeting together would be one way to strengthen the executive leadership right now.
Mm-hmm.
But Judy, I think you had some thoughts too.
I just would like to see maybe, because we've had fewer people on our executive committee, and right now there isn't a gender analysis committee, or it's me, but I'm not doing committee work alone. I would like to see an interim committee for the fall until we can have our elections. And I'm open to different ways of configuring creatively, as long as it's consistent with our bylaws or not in violation of our bylaws and city ordinances. I'm glad I asked the question, Jesse, because I completely was misconstruing what you said. So thank you. Questions are a good thing.
Are there any immediate thoughts about that, at least for the fall, going into the new year? Because there are how many of us? 9 on the commission. And who's not here? Sharon, Councilwoman Gross, 1, 2, 3, and Delisa. Because half of us are on the executive committee.
Right. So I
I
wonder,
know.
would it make
So I'm just kind of like, what?
And because I'm on the gender analysis committee is the best committee for me, but I would be happy to serve in some function on the executive committee, especially on an interim basis while we're short until we can get some more commissioners appointed. If you'll have me, I accept that you.
We would love you, Judy. We would love you.
I mean, I really would be honored to be able to do it, and I think right now we're short, and I'm very willing to step up and help in whatever capacity the spirit of the group thinks would be most useful for the good of the whole and the good of our work that we do.
So we're short a chair and short a vice chair. Are you interested in one of those roles, Judy?
Interested, willing to do the work because it needs to be done. I mean, would it make sense to have one person to sort of be a chair in the chair role and not try to fill 2 positions if we're kind of doing an interim leadership team for a couple of months? I
think that makes
brainstorming live YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
Well,
I mean, are there other people
motion
offering to step into another chair or vice chair position?
Maybe I could make a motion and we could put the discussion on the floor then, because then it'll be official. So I'd like to make a motion that we vote on electing Judy Hale as an interim chair for the fall through the end of December to serve in an interim capacity.
Second.
All right, that puts it on the floor for discussion, Morgan.
Yay.
I think
I say go for it. We don't need all the formalities, but I get it. We kind of need the formality.
I think it's a good idea, and it will at least help. Any assistance is helpful, but this will kind of help us close out what we've been doing for the remainder of this year on a high note.
Yeah. And it just so happens that those of us who are on the executive committee happen to be city employees. So, we're already wearing one full-time hat that, spills over from time to time. So that would be tremendously helpful, Judy, at least in us trying to find our footing throughout the remainder of the year. Are there any other thoughts about this? I do want to give time for our guest.
Thank you for your leadership, Judy.
Well, we'll see if you thank me, but you're welcome.
You've gotten us.
You need to call it to a vote since the motion is on the floor.
Yep. So motion to, what do we say, appoint, vote? Raise Judy Hale as interim chair for the remainder of 2022.
Make a motion.
Right, the motion's made. You just have to call it to a vote.
What do we do? Just raise our hands? All in favor?
Ask for in favor.
All those in favor?
All in favor.
Aye.
Great. Yay, Chair Judy Hale. So does that mean that you take over from this point for the meeting? Or do you want me to close out?
I would be honored if you would close out this meeting.
Judy said you're not going to put me on the spot on this September Tuesday. That's fine. Okay, so we got a little bit of progress with our leadership structure. I'm so informal. I'm just like, yep, Judy's the chair. So Janet, did you want to give any information for Workforce Equity Committee?
Sure. So we are continuing with our 1 hour free training. So anyone that is listening and will watch this as a recording, we will be posting this week when our next free 1 hour training for workforce equity. We want every woman, every young lady to join us for lunch, 12 noon to 1. The date will be announced on our website, but you will learn a skill set that will, one, you'll know your value, you'll know your worth, you'll understand how to negotiate a salary for yourself as you seek new employment, or if you're asking for a promotion, or if you're asking for a raise. We all know that women are paid less than men. And this free 1 hour training that the City of Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission has committed to doing to help close. We're not trying to inch it. We are working toward closing the gender pay gap. And I want to invite everyone to join us for a nice 1 hour lunch and learn on how to enhance your KSAs, your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And that will help us close the gender pay gap in the greater Pittsburgh area. Stay tuned. The date and link and everything will be posted on the Gender Equity Commission website by the end of this week. And I want everyone to invite a friend, invite 5 friends, but we want to make sure that we address this matter that is very prevalent, not only in Pittsburgh, but all throughout the world. And so we're going to do our part. We have been committed since 2018 on this subject, and we are not giving up the fight because we are making progress as we have trained over 350 women in the greater Pittsburgh area just last year within 6 months. That's fabulous. And so we want to train more than that as we have continued to do training all throughout this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Judy, did you have anything for Cities for CEDAW for the group and the public to know?
Yeah, so we had our regular monthly meeting earlier in September where we discussed different strategies for advocating for a gender equity commission at the county level in Allegheny County. And we also discussed ways to strategies for amplifying the existing gender and race pay and promotion equity ordinance at the county level. We had an intern last year who did some research and analysis of the 2 reports that have issued on that ordinance, and we need to look more at the report from that. But that's the bulk of what we were working on. We also submitted a report to the National Cities for CEDAW campaign, and I've been working with this commission to get our commission to also submit a report, which we are in progress on, and we'll hopefully finish this week, certainly this month, to send in a report to the National City for CEDAW's campaign group on the accomplishments and efforts of the Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission. Any questions?
Thank you, Judy. And Jesse, I just want to give you the floor to, in talking about workforce equity, to share with the group as well as the public about the state of poverty in Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Morgan. Yeah, I think it's worth contextualizing everything that we do around some of this new data that just came in. And certainly built on what we know from our own report that came out 2 years ago, but we've got in just this week, new data from the Census Bureau around some poverty and some other statistics in Pittsburgh. And Sadly, once again, Pittsburgh is not looking so good compared to other places. Our data is really quite poor. So I thought I would just share quickly so we get it read into the record what this data looks like, and then we can also be using this to lift up and elevate some of our own strategies in the way that we're thinking about these solutions. So again, this is US Census Bureau data, just came out. We've learned now that during COVID, about 1 in 5 Pittsburghers is living in poverty. So we've got a 20% poverty rate here in Pittsburgh. That's pretty devastating. If we think about that, that's up 5% from 2 years ago. So this is looking at 2021 data, since we're not all the way through 2022 yet, but we're already up 5%. I would expect that some of these numbers might even get worse. It's hard to know. So that's about 56,000 of our fellow Pittsburghers that are living in poverty. So I just want to kind of elevate that and think about it. It's a lot worse than the national rate, which is only about 12.8%, right? So if you're comparing our 20, that's a lot more than the national average, just to put that in perspective. And again, not surprisingly, given what we discovered in our report, many of the cities' BIPOC groups are seeing poverty rates that are more than double the US national average. More than a third of Black Pittsburghers and Hispanic residents, more than 1 in 4 of our Asian residents is living below the poverty line in this 2021 data. So we really want to make sure that we're emphasizing that. There was some other interesting data in here that intersects with some of the recommendations that came out of the Gender Equity Commission. We know now that about 1 in 10 Pittsburghers did not have internet access. And yet we know how many people were working from home. The number of Pittsburghers working from home skyrocketed, as it did nationally, but our numbers really went up quite high. Close to about a third, maybe about 33% of Pittsburghers were working from home in 2021. And that's almost double the national rate. So again, you know, when we talk about Pittsburghizing our solutions and thinking about, as Commissioner Manuel's always having us do, what our solutions look like in Pittsburgh, I think paying attention to the particularities of this data and what's happening here. So more folks working from home, fewer of our Pittsburgh residents, our fellow Pittsburghers, having internet access. So even to be able to access what we're doing right now, really important. The report that came out also, I won't drill down too much into the details, did talk about some transportation issues. And we have talked on this commission about the way that women and girls get around differently in cities and infrastructure needs. So we now know that those infrastructure needs are different here in Pittsburgh too, compared to national statistics. For instance, more of us take public transportation. Not sure if people knew that broadly. So some interesting data coming out of this, again, US Census Bureau data. So I'll stop there, but I want to just make sure that we have those numbers sort of at the tip of our fingertips.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jessie. Yes, I just have to take a deep breath after that because it's not pretty information. It just continues, you know, things that we already know, but makes us think about how we can be actionable in that regard. But without further ado, I wanted to give space for our special guest, Faye, who is my wonderful colleague in the mayor's office, who manages our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. And I've already spoke about this earlier with my GEC colleagues, but you know, we tend to you know, talk about equity in very black and white terms and ways, both literally and figuratively. And it's incumbent on us, if we think about equity and intersectionality, to be mindful and accountable to our immigrant and refugee communities. So I wanted to give Faye some time to talk about her incredible work in Mayor's office, but also how this work intersects with gender equity at large. So Faye, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Morgan. I really appreciate and I'm honored to be before you commissioners today. Morgan, thank you for your leadership and for recognizing the importance of knowing that gender equity intersects all race and ethnicity. And again, and thank you all commissioners for accepting or allowing me to be able to come before you today. So again, just to introduce myself, my name is Faishola Akintola, and I manage our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. The office is newer, just kick-started this year, this January. It was voted into office, I guess, in December of last year. In the previous administration, you were under an initiative, the Welcoming Pittsburgh initiative, that some of you all might be aware of. And some of the work that we do, or the way I like to explain our work, is that we exist to work with community partners, right? In order for us to serve our residents, we have to know who they are, and to really recognize that when we say immigrants and refugees, we're not talking about monoliths, we're talking about different facets of human beings, different cultures, different religions, different ethnicities at play. So our goal is to kind of build those relationships. We work with different community partners, our immigrant leaders, our refugee leaders, our refugee resettlement agencies, and I'm excited to see Sloan's picture on the call. Again, so partners such as those, again, who work closely directly with community partners to learn about them and to figure out how we could come together to help problem solve. I always say this, like it's city per se is not the answer, at least not by ourselves, right? We can't do this work without community. With that, we do hold monthly calls that kind of kick-started in COVID. I think Jesse was kind of hitting at it. We know that our communities tend to be left behind, so we're really intentional about, during COVID, we were meeting on a weekly basis then, just to be able to provide updates to community on what were resources, what were opportunities, what were in terms of rental assistance housing for small businesses. We really wanted them to know here are resources that exist, and then we as government helped in the back end to troubleshoot barriers that existed for them taking advantage of those resources. And because of that, community has kind of appreciated this frequent call. Now we meet on a monthly basis, where we have on average about 40 to 50 people join our call organizations. Service providers join just to hear updates from government, as we are trying to be more accountable to people, but at the same time, really create an environment where organizations and community get to share with one another and really foster an environment of collaboration where you see something and say, I like what you're doing. Hey, we could help on this end too, or have you considered us partnering on this? We really like that in order to help meet the needs of our communities, of our residents, right? Now that we have this office, we've been working on creating a strategic plan, goals going forward, and this came into fruition based on conversations we had with refugee resettlement agencies and conversations that we had with immigrants and refugees directly through a new engagement, a newcomer engagement initiative that we're doing in partnership with All for All. And so with that, we kind of focused on 6 buckets. So language access, right? When we're talking about meeting the needs of community, we're talking about how do we address those barriers that they have. So language access, again, we know that the resources that the city has and even adjacent resources, such as the URA and so on and so forth, how do we work together by lifting up and removing those barriers of language access, so community can actually know what it is that they're interfacing with, and so on and so forth. Civic engagement, we're so big in this office on civic engagement because I believe that's a form of empowerment. When people know their government and people know the ins and outs of their government, they're empowered to be able to reach out and not just empower themselves, but even their community, their loved ones, also get empowered via that as well. So whenever we have the opportunity, which we have some coming up for our Latinx students, but previously we had for our Afghan youth, through a RISE program where we get to educate them and teach them about local government. Here's what this department does, and here's why you or your family could contact them, and we love to hear from you. Again, this is all centered around this city is your city as well, and you deserve every right to take advantage of the resource and to walk freely in this city as you see fit. As you know, our immigrants and refugees come from different backgrounds, different kind of experiences with government, right? Some of our residents actually in the situation they're in as a result of government, right? Bad government, failed government. So it's how do we kind of build relationships there going forward to really introduce this government. And I'm excited for the past administration, I'm excited for this new administration because they were always forward thinking and they really realized the importance, right, of our immigrant community being a part of the city. Another kind of bucket is we have is workforce development, community awareness initiatives, housing, and then small business and entrepreneurship. And of course, as you all as commissioners, you understand that gender equity ties into all of those buckets, right? I think something that comes to mind is as we have like, some refugees coming in, we know that some countries where they're coming in from, women sometimes don't necessarily have prominent roles and are not encouraged, right, to take up leadership positions. So I think what's interesting is we're seeing some of that dynamic come into the United States. And I have to, and I'm speaking real personally here, where I have to fight the urge of a westernized form of approach in saying like, oh, you know what, because we're in America, this must be how it's done. And I have to think about the fact that for someone who is coming here, who has lived the majority, if not all of their lives in a certain way, takes patience, takes really getting to understand them, to really sharing like, hey, I hope you know you have rights here and we're here to assist you in that. Not necessarily force you into the westernized form of what it looks like for your gender to be, to be free and so on and so forth. If that makes sense, I'm trying to be diplomatic in the way I'm saying this thing. But I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to think, what else do? We like to promote the work that our immigrant community is doing. Morgan so generously said is Hispanic Heritage Month. And it's a month to really celebrate and really recognize the work that our Latinx community has done in our city. I mean, we have incredible organizations that are serving a high increase of our Latinx community. I mean, Dr. Ramey shared census data. I always like to keep, I have the one from 2020. I like to share with folks a lot. And just looking specifically in the city of Pittsburgh, how our Asian community has grown over 47%. Other single races alone grew over 100%. Two or more races grew 133%. And those within those buckets that saw themselves as Hispanic or identified as Hispanic has grown over 66%. So we're seeing an increase in our diverse population in the city. So it really makes sense to pay attention to that. And we're going to continue to see those trends. And again, that's our work, is for them is to be able to meet these communities, learn about those communities, encourage them, right? Partner with them to know that the city is theirs, right? So Morgan talked about volunteering in boards, authorities, a commission. Would like to push that because their voices matter, right? They have great skills, they have great understanding, and we want them to share it with us because we believe we become a better city as a result of that. Our mayor here is always talking, that's his goal. How do we create a city where it's safe, welcoming, and thriving? And he understands that equity and diversity is at the heart of all of that, right? So it's really embracing, again, our cultures in terms of workforce and all those different things. And we know that we can't do this alone. It's not a one-man show or not a one-office show, right? But it's working in partnership together. That's why I'm excited for this conversation with gender equity, because it's working together to help us meet our unique goals going forward. And I think I've said a lot. I would end there. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Go ahead, Janet.
Hi, Faye. And I like the fact that you mentioned not trying to westernize it, right? And Americanize it. I think one of the biggest misquotes, back in the day was, hey, America is a melting pot. I've always disagreed with that because then you're losing everyone's identity. Transform everyone into just one. And the beauty of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is that we all retain who we really are, our authenticity. So what are things that the City of Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission can do to assist the work that you're doing?
That's great. Thank you, Janet. And I loved how you really explained that. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it that way. I hope we have that written somewhere that we could copy and promote. But that's really good. I would say one, like I talked about our monthly calls that we have, right? I would say again, if it's the chair, the new chair, Judy Morgan, folks who are interested in joining our monthly calls to really share updates. Again, I really want them to be educated, not about just government, but different things that are happening. So I would say, I mean, just sharing the information. And then I guess working groups that you all might have. I don't know if it's folks internally or folks externally are including that, but making sure folks are invited to be a part of that. And it's also for me as well, or our office, my colleague and I, that whenever we learn of things going on within gender equity, also sharing those opportunities with our folks. For instance, I don't know, and please forgive me if I misspeak, but again, if you're looking for commissioners, how can I really share and really encourage folks in our call to sign that volunteer form so that they can be considered or reviewed, right? Again, no one's guaranteed a spot, but again, to really make sure we diversify, continue to diversify the voices on all of our boards, authorities, and commissions. And that's what I could think of now initially, Jenna.
And is there flyers or links or information that we as a commission can actually share on our respective website? And how can we partner with you on, inviting, different people to attend our monthly training on pay?
So that's really good. I would say if you have a flyer on that, just send it to me. I will forward it out to our listing, our directory of people, of folks. I would also encourage, like we talked about with language access, I also think making sure it's translated in the languages that our communities could read as well, and not anticipate. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of languages spoken here. So if it's like, we could give you the top 3, the top 5 that we could share out with folks so that people could see it and be encouraged to want to participate. I think that's that. I will also encourage folks, I mean, our social media pages, we try to be up to date on those on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So that's where whenever we get things from community, we just pass it on and we share it on social media for folks too. So I think that's also a way. And of course, Morgan and I are down the road from each other. So just down the street, our frequent conversation. So I learn from her and she learns from me, and then we can also keep that going. And Janet, you were up the floor. So, having those conversations, being more intentional about that, I think that's the way too.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with our AAUW point of contacts for the training. And I did mention to them that we want to start having different languages. And let's, if we're going to talk about equity, not only for compensation, but let's make sure that it's inclusive as well. So you could always share, the top 5 languages, and then I can work with them on that end. So that way we as the commission, we can present that to everyone to let them know how inclusive and belonging that we really are in this particular training and in other things that we are doing moving forward as a commission. So thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Go ahead, Sloan.
Hi there. And I just first want to really lift up, Faye, the work that you do, and to let everyone know, both here now and then watching the recording. It has been a real effort to move from an initiative to the permanent office. And Faye, you and your team and everyone who supported you, it's really a testament to Pittsburgh's commitment to welcoming and equity. So I really first just want to thank you from all of us on the commission and all of us as Pittsburghers for the work that you do every single day. Not just when you're being recognized for it, but every day that that you're standing up for all of our new neighbors, and for being here and sharing about the work. I think it's important to note and to put into the record that Faye and First Welcoming Initiative and now the permanent office really did lead the path on having Pittsburgh be certified as a welcoming city. That was a standards, a very detailed multi-month process through Welcoming America to be certified as a welcoming city. I know, and we have heard here in the census and other comments that Pittsburgh is not always doing so well for our BIPOC women and women of color and our new neighbors. But yet there is a lot of really positive work happening. A lot of it starts or is connected or navigated by Faye and her team at the Welcoming Office. So I did just want to make sure we put that in the record. My question for you, Faye, is could you share a little bit? I think one of the best parts of your office is that you're representing and helping to navigate folks that maybe don't have citizenship yet. They're on the path to citizenship, or they're working through other angles. I think there often tends to be a lot of confusion from folks on what that looks like. Could you just talk generally for commissioners and for anybody else about how important that representation is for all Pittsburghers, regardless of their status, but then also maybe a little bit about how that process works?
No, that's really good. And I should say thank you so much, Sloan, for that. That's very generous of you, kind of you to be able to share. But yes, thank you so much for that. I'm trying to say how do you say this? Okay, so yes, the fact that when we talk about our residents, we're now always talking about residents who are citizens, right? We're talking about undocumented residents, and we're talking about residents who have a green card, or there's so many different kind of visa processes that people have. And even when I do speak as well, I know that I was asked this question by a senior who is from China, and he asked, when you do this work, in general, are we just thinking about, do we think about students as well? And I say, absolutely, like you're a resident here. So also thinking about international students, all of those people play a role in this. Also to share, I mean, our undocumented population is growing as well. And I think, it's also growing because, again, when it comes to entry-level positions, in some sectors, when it comes to the fact that, folks here are sharing the opportunities with other family members, like, hey, there's low cost of living, there's a supportive environment, people feel more welcomed to come. And again, this just goes into some work that we've been doing too with public safety in collaboration with community members, of really having an unbiased policing policy that really talks about we're here to serve everyone, and not some who are citizens per se. So yes, so when we talk about a spectrum, all of our residents, we are talking about citizens, non-citizens, those that fall under so many different categories, even those that our resettlement agency just recently resettled, right, with an Afghan population who are coming here as humanitarian parolees and not even refugee status, right? Because it was done so quickly, they didn't get that status yet. They will have to do, and Sloan, you could probably speak more to this than I can. There would have to be some legal work to get them to that status, and then to eventually get them to citizenship. So the spectrum, so that's why it's important for our work and just people that we work with too, to really think about when we put out applications, like really look through what are you asking, and why does that question really matter? I think we're thinking about some stuff around workforce. We're thinking about that in terms of youth engagement and youth opportunities. And I always have to throw the question like, well, why do you need a social security number? Like, well, why is this needed? Because again, anything that really would put a barrier for our communities, not to say it doesn't matter, but it's for us to really think through, are we just doing this because it's generally asked, or are we doing this because there is a reason why? So again, I really appreciate you saying that, but we really always have to think about being intentional about what are barriers and what are ways we could work around it, and really thinking through, is there something else that might be a good substitute versus that, right? And yeah, so in terms of naturalization process, I mean, it's more expensive and sometimes it's a very costly thing to do. And there are people that might be here for years and decades and not apply, because sometimes there's misinformation around, do you qualify to be a citizen? Some people don't think that they are, and years down the line, they find out like, oh, I actually was. And of course, because cost also plays a role in that, as you could imagine with inflation, even more so now, right? The cost of being able to go through those documentations and apply is very expensive. But normally it's gone through USCIS, which right now, I'm going to Google it, even though we just literally hosted a naturalization ceremony last week. But United States Citizenship and Immigration Service team, who primarily works through that application, and that we and other community members partner with to host naturalization ceremonies, where we really do celebrate those that have sacrificed time, effort, so much in becoming a citizen. I think it was just last week that we naturalized 26, I should say USCIS naturalized 26 here in our council chamber. 26 people from 22 different countries. And the administration, we love to celebrate that because we know it takes a lot before you become one. Now that you are a citizen, it's how do we really encourage you again to continue to be a part of this, to be a part of the city, to be a part of this region. And also knowing that even before you become a citizen, you're still a Pittsburgher, right? You're still a resident, and you deserve to be treated as such, right? Sloan, I don't know if I hit at everything that you wanted. Please feel free to chime in if I missed anything and you think something else should be said.
No, I think that's a wonderful overview. And the only thing that I would add, I'm really glad you mentioned students. I'm really glad that you sort of mentioned there's so many different types of residents in Pittsburgh that are, utilizing public transportation, that are sending their children to school, that are, paying taxes. Anybody, regardless of status with a job, that is paying taxes, that's helping for our potholes and our police pension and teacher salaries. And we need these people living in the city of Pittsburgh to help, support all the core services we have. The only addition I was thinking as you're going through that really great description, I would mention is that it's often mixed even within a family. We see a lot of families that have a baby, and that baby is born an American citizen. And maybe mom is 3 years into a 5-year plan for citizenship. Maybe dad is at year 5 or 7 and he's there. So there's a lot of families even within, all around the country and absolutely right here at home in Pittsburgh that have that mix even within their family where their kids are that American citizen. I'll tell a quick story, if I may, that might warm all of your hearts. It certainly does mine. But we had an Afghan family that had a baby recently, and I was at the hospital, and the dad pointed at his other kids, 2 other children, and he said, "These children are Afghan American." And he pointed to the tiny baby, Muhammad. He named him and said, "This baby is American Afghan," and he switched it. And it was so sweet because they, flawed as it might be, strive for that American dream and believe in it and believe it to be true. And I think that work is deeply rooted in the intersectional work we do on gender. 75% of the world's refugees and immigrants are women and children. And the majority of people forced to flee their lives are women and children and people that are being targeted, persecuted, violence against them, and increasingly climate change. And so as we welcome these new folks to Pittsburgh, I would just encourage everyone to remember that the gender work that we do is deeply rooted and connected to the work that we also see happening in our refugee and immigrant communities.
Well said, Sloan. Well said.
I really appreciate this, as an immigrant myself. It's been 40 some years. I appreciate all the work that you're doing welcoming immigrants. I would just add to that, I know from experience, a lot of immigrants may not have certifications that, they may have a great education overseas, but those certifications do not transfer over quickly enough. I want to put it out there that, I can speak for Public Works that we do hire, people from the ground up, and we can set up pathways to, move up in Public Works. Most of our employees start out as drivers or laborers, and actually there really are good jobs. And there, some of the hours might work for certain people. Like we have shifts from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and those really work well for some people. They put their kids on the bus and then come home sometimes and pick them up, and they still have that family time, or maybe their husbands are working. Like there's flexibility in Public Works, and it's not to say that they're not educated, but they can start on the ground up until they develop themselves, and their certifications sort of transfer to American, like public companies or whatever higher professional jobs they may be seeking. Starting off in Public Works and in the city in general is a great place. I didn't always do that. I didn't know about that. We went into restaurant business. Just a lot of immigrants do that because they know they can cook and they can provide something. But there's a whole range of abilities out there. And, I would like to invite people to Public Works, because, we can hire, we can train, and we can, in most cases, pay for their, if they want to get their CDL licenses or any certifications, we can help with those. So just wanted to put it out there. I can get with you too, Faye, if you'd like more information about that.
Please do, Marcel. Like I talked about, one of the buckets is workforce, and I know that we were challenged as a city in terms of, and the city, like, they would love to see it reflected in the city, like how we're more diverse. And I know that there's work being done there already, but right now it's trying to even get what are roles within the city of Pittsburgh that English primarily is not even needed, especially as we have new immigrants or refugees coming in that might not be proficient in English. But again, the opportunity is still there, and they could, work or drive. So no, nonetheless, Marcel, please, I would love to connect with you on that so we could share that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hey, I just have so much gratitude for you and the work that you do, and it just makes me, feel less alone in this work, because it's thankless work, but it is imperative for us to think about all of the intersections, right? When we think about equity and justice, what does that truly look like? So I appreciate you, providing a lens for us and accountability for us when we're talking about gender equity. Who is it for, right? And I'm excited about the work that we can continue to partner to do, especially since you're right down the hall from me. But that makes it easier. But for what Pittsburgh wants to accomplish, especially what the mayor wants to accomplish as well, I think it's all a common denominator at the end of the day. So are there any upcoming events we should know about, or do you have any parting words for the commission or just the public in general?
Not to put me on the spot, Morgan. Again, thank you. Thank you for your words. I'm excited again for us to work together closely as well. And a part of what I'm just excited again for us to be more intentional about working together. I think it's needed. I think it's sometimes a slow ride for sure. As long as we're all patient in the process, I think we'll get there. In terms of things that come to mind, and I'm going to feel bad because I'm just thinking about what is coming up right in front of me. I know that on Saturday, the Pittsburgh, sorry, do you have a briefing right here? The Pittsburgh Chinese Cultural Festival is happening in Mellon Park this Saturday. They're expecting a lot of people. So I think if people are free on Saturday, I think they would, I know they would love to have you attend. Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation is having their 10-year and the 10-year anniversary, and they are just such an incredible organization that have been helping a lot of our Latinx community, especially those interested in starting businesses, getting connected to housing. And they also have their anniversary coming up on October 8th in Beachview. So those are two that are on top of mind right now. But again, we will stay in constant communication, but it's open to the public for folks. And again, just an opportunity to really celebrate the works that different communities are doing, to let them know like they're valuable, and we want to be a part of their, we want to learn about their communities, we want to help celebrate their communities. So again, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And speaking about any other upcoming community engagements, commissioners, are there any events or engagements that you'd like to share with the commission or with the public or the public? Go ahead, Jesse.
I invite folks to come out tonight to the launch of season 7 of the Just Film series, which is a collaboration of the Black Women's Policy Center, Chatham University, the Women and Girls Foundation, the Women's Law Project, Mom's Work, which is a project of the National Council of Jewish Women, and the YWCA Greater Pittsburgh. So all groups that work on gender equity in our city collaborate on this gender equity film series. And tonight we are screening a film, it's called a documentary called The Janes, about abortion rights, reproductive justice work. And we have a rock star panel that will be speaking with us, and we'll be doing voter registration because today is National Voter Registration Day. So we need everybody to register to vote. So I invite you to come out tonight to Chatham University at 6 o'clock. We'll feed you, we'll have a great film, we'll have a great panel discussion. And if you can't make this one, we'll have 2 more films this fall. So a nice lineup and opportunity to talk about intersectional gender equity and what it looks like in Pittsburgh.
You beat me to it. I was going to give my little national voter registry pitch. Any other events or anything coming up? All right. Are there any public comments? Our folks at the city channel.
No, there are
Public
no
comment?
one.
Okay, that's fine. All right, anything else for the good of the order? All right, well, my dog wants to contribute something, but I want you all to go enjoy this beautifully sunny day. I think today's like the last day of summer, something like that. So can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I make a motion.
Motion. I
Thank
second.
you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everyone, go be great.
Thank
Enjoy the
you.
sun, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
See ya.